Okay, welcome back. This is the final in the three-part series of Robert Whiting's Japan's Spy Games, the Cold War in Japan. This was published June 17th, 2022 on Robert Whiting's Substack. That's robertwhiting.substack.com, or you can go to tokyojunkie.com and check out all of his materials, including his books, Tokyo Underworld, Fast Times and Hard Life, an American Gangster in Japan. You got to have Wa, the meaning of Ichiro. His latest is Tokyo Junkie. Anyways, this one, again, is in the Cold War in Japan series, and this is the final one in the three-part series. It's titled The Defectors. Tokyo. One of the more memorable events of the Soviet era in Japan was the defection of Viktor Belenko, a lieutenant and pilot in the Soviet Defense Forces, on September 6, 1976. Belenko flew his Mikoyan-Gurevish MiG-25P Foxbat aircraft from Russia to Hakodate Airport in Hokkaido, landing on the runway with only 30 seconds of fuel left, barely missing a Boeing 727 airliner that was taking off. Because of bad weather, Japanese ground radar completely missed his initial approach. Belenko was disillusioned with subpar living conditions on Chuguyevka Air Base, 120 miles from Vladivostok in the Far East, especially after his wife told him she was going to leave him and take their young son with her. So he decided to defect from the Soviet Union to the United States via Japan. He left Chuguyevka with his squadron on a training mission, and then departed midway through and headed for Hokkaido. The runway in Hakodate was too short for the MiG-25, and Belenko ran off the tarmac. Upon arrival, he requested asylum in the United States. The Soviet Union initially refused to accept the defection. They insisted that Belenko had lost his way, and later that he had been drugged by the Japanese. It was only after an official from the Soviet embassy was allowed to meet Belenko, and soon after boarded a Northwest Orient Airlines flight to the U.S., that the Russians relented. The Russians seized Japanese fishing vessels near their waters and imprisoned their crews in what was thought to be retaliation for Japan not sending the MiG back promptly. Japanese and American specialists had disassembled the aircraft and examined it, discovering that it was the super jet fighter they have believed it to be. In November, they packed it all up into around 40 boxes and shipped them back to the Soviet Union. The Soviet government was extremely displeased with the state of their airplane and complained that pieces were missing. They sent Japan a demand for $10 million for the damage to the plane. In return, Japan charged the USSR $40,000 for the damage to Hakodate Airport and shipping costs. Neither bill is known to have been paid. While Belenko's flight had been a defection and not an attack, it had highlighted shortcomings in Japan's air defense system. The inability of Japanese radar to track him and of Japanese fighters to intercept him led to changes in the defense system. Belenko was given political asylum in the U.S. and was later awarded American citizenship. He became a military consultant and a public speaker, and also married an American woman. He did not return to Moscow until after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. The most high-profile defection occurred in 1979, when a major in the Soviet Union secret police, the KGB, who had been stationed in Tokyo under the guise of a Soviet journalist, defected to the U.S. His name was Stanislav Levchenko. He became one of the few known KGB agents ever to defect to the U.S. Levchenko was instrumental in detailing the KGB's Japanese spy network to the U.S. government, including congressional testimony in the 1980s. Levchenko told a House of Representatives panel that in addition to acquiring intelligence on Japan, the KGB's mission was there to create distrust between the Japanese and Americans in order to weaken U.S. influence. He testified that he was in charge of 10 Japanese agents, 4 of whom he said he recruited himself. They included journalists, an editor, members of parliament, and a high-ranking official of the Japanese Socialist Party. Posing as a writer, Levchenko had told his interview subjects, who were, for the most part, influential Japanese, that he was collecting data for a confidential bulletin circulated only amongst high-ranking Politburo members. Charmed and flattered, the Japanese often cooperated, but the bulletin never existed. CIA Deputy Director John McMahon said at the time, the information he provided was, quote, so damaging to the Soviet cause that it would be inconceivable that he might be under Soviet KGB control. He left behind a wife and son in Tokyo who were forbidden to join him. They were forced to return to Moscow, where they lived in disgrace. Once in the States, Levchenko adopted to American fast food and movies, and even did a cross-country tour with fellow defector Belenko, the MiG pilot who flew from Vladivostok to Hokkaido on his flight to freedom in a Chevy Monte Carlo. Levchenko accomplished this defection by going to the U.S.-run Sanno Hotel in Akasaka in central Tokyo. One evening, where he corralled a U.S. Navy captain and asked him for help in obtaining political asylum in the U.S. A few hours later, it was granted. In 1981, a Soviet court sentenced him to death in absentia. With the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Soviet Union ceased to exist, and along with it, Soviet, if not Russian, espionage. We have some interesting references. There are URLs. I'll try to post them. One is a 1976, September 7th article in the New York Times, and it's Russian lands new MiG-25 in Japan, seeking U.S. refuge, Soviet pilot. There's also a 1983, May 29th article in the Washington Post, and it was a KGB defector wages war against Soviet system. A third reference is by Gordon Brooke-Shepard, and his book was Stormbirds, Soviet Post-War Defectors, The Dramatic True Stories, from 1945 to 1985. It was published in 1989 by the publisher in New York, Henry Holt. Then we have John Laffin's Brassey's Book of Espionage, published by Brassey's in 1996. And finally, we have The KGB Today, The Hidden Hand, published by Reader's Digest Press in New York in 1983, and also by Berkeley Books in 1985. Reason why I paused on the part about the Sanno Hotel in Akasaka was I forgot we currently have the new Sanno Hotel, and that's next to the French Embassy. And I think that's in Minato Ward. What happened was we had originally post-war the Sanno Hotel, and that was in Akasaka. And of course, I forget when they moved it, but in my lifetime, I guess I remember it as I remember just the new Sanno Hotel. It's run by the U.S. Navy, so you can only go there if you're active duty. Most veterans, and I guess also they allow U.S. People working for U.S. Mission Japan, embassy, consular. So if you're not, you can be signed in as a guest. You can't be from any certain countries, although I've seen sometimes they've breached security protocol. So I've seen Chinese nationals there that shouldn't have been allowed in, things like that. But nowadays, I think they're a little bit more up to speed and tighter on that. Anyways, that was the end of Robert Whiting's Spy Game series. And I think after that, I'm probably going to look at a couple of other articles that he's done on his Substack, maybe some of the more recent ones. that he has been doing. But one of the ones I want to run is this one is called Steve Parker, husband of Hollywood star, I think it's Shirley MacLaine, and conman extraordinaire in Japan. So he was Steve Parker was one of the I guess celebrities was here in Tokyo, and Robert interviewed him many years ago, and he did an article in 2022. Okay, that's it. If you like what you have heard, please go to Robert's Substack. That's robertwhiting.substack.com. If you have any requests, most articles are behind a paywall. You can put them in the comments and subscribe. Thank you.